friend. Welcome to the You're Too Sensitive podcast with maybe your most sensitive friend, Jade. I'm so happy you're here. Today I want to share something that I'm not even quite sure how to share, but I've been wanting to for years. So we'll see how this alchemizes. I do want to say it's kind of a heavy topic. I'm going to be talking about childhood abuse. But the main thing that I desire to share within that is how proud I am to have, and I want to share the journey of the transformation of that into golden nuggets of wisdom and healing and art. And how I personally really identify with freeing myself from being a victim, not because what happened was right, by no means, not even close. It was horrible. And I am no one's victim. I am free. But it took me a while to get there. And I'll tell you, it feels so good. I don't need to be anyone's victim. I can be responsible for my own healing. I can use the nuggets I've learned to live my very best life and to be the very best mother I can be to my now 13-year-old son and to all my clients who might have experienced something similar. So I hope you stick around and thank you for being here. I would like to start out by saying, Mom, if you're listening to this, I'm not even sure if you listen to my podcast, but if you are listening, I don't know if this is a good one for you to listen to. You don't need to feel this pain, and I just think it's best if you don't know this pain, to be honest. No need to go there, so you might want to skip this one, Mom. So I want to begin this story by setting the stage. If you listen to my first episode, I give you a little introduction to my childhood, which I was born in Tucson, but at a very young age, my mom and my stepdad moved to Mexico, to this little village called Yelapa. But my dad stayed in Tucson, and around third grade, I was put into school in Yelapa. Before that, I was going back and forth a lot. I was going to school in Tucson, primary school, like kindergarten, first and second grade, in Tucson, living at those really scary apartments. My mom was in Mexico. My dad was doing his best. It was horrible. But when I finally moved to Yelapa full time and started going to school there, it was third grade, and there was a little community, I said before. There was a community of expat Americans, a few Canadians, and a very few American and Canadian children. There was, I don't know, maybe 6 of us total, depending. At one time, I definitely was the only American child for maybe a year or two, but there was always a few of us, American and Canadian children, living in Yelapa and going to school there. So there's this whole really eclectic group of expats. Oh my goodness. Such interesting people who have been told that they were going to die and so decided to move there to live out their last days, but ended up living for years afterwards. People who were told they were going blind, like Maggie. Maggie was originally from Indonesia, but she grew up in the United States, and she moved to Yelapa like in the late 70s, when she was going blind. And so when she moved to Yelapa, she could still see, but by the time I knew her, she was fully blind, and she lived in this village where you, with your eyes, have to look under almost everything to make sure there's no scorpions that are gonna sting you. At least back then. I think it's different now, but back then the jungle was a lot thicker. There was a lot less buildings. And Maggie, bless her precious heart, she lived in the jungle alone, blind. Such a character. She smoked lots of cigarettes, and she could identify you by your footsteps. That's what's so cool. When we lose one sense, I feel like our other senses like amp up, which is such a cool realization that we even have that capacity. But if she heard my footsteps, she'd call out from her house to the trail. Her house was just a little bit ways away from the trail, and she'd be like, "Jade, is that you? Can I get a ride down to the beach? I need cigarettes." And by a ride, she meant, can she grab onto my arm and can I guide her down to the beach? And as a kid, I'd be like, oh, I didn't want to. I always tried to be as quiet as I could walking by her house so she wouldn't identify my footsteps. But she often did. And so I would take her down to the beach and I'd drop her off and I'd take off to go do what I want to do with my friends. And she would find a ride home. Like, amazing. But she loved her cigarettes that she would buy at Rana Feliz, the Happy Frog, which was the only little store on the beach back then. And sweet little dark store that was a sandy floor, and they had like a little cigarette case. By cigarette case, I mean like a glass case that had all these candies in them. Not by all, I mean like a few choices. And then behind that was like the counter. Behind that were the cigarettes, and then there was like a few racks of muumuus and towels and beach things for the tourists that would come to the beach. But that's where Maggie would buy her cigarettes. And if they weren't open, she would find them because they lived in the back. So she'd go knock and make them open the store so she could buy her cigarettes. Anyways, I'm going on a tangent because Maggie is so amazing. She did pass away a few years ago, but I did get to photograph her, and she's in my book, The Crone Body, which is, yeah. And she also loved making macrame. In the photo that I took of her for my book, she's standing next to one of her macrame pieces. She also was an incredible cook of Indonesian food. Oh my goodness. Oh, so good. And she did it all without seeing. Living in a jungle with no electricity, no running water, scorpions and snakes, and a trail that is very precarious. You have to see or be led. Very brave. So Maggie is an example of the wild expats that would make their way to Yelapa. And there was, more wealthy gringos that settled there, and then there was poorer ones like us, barely getting by. And there were a few gay couples, and then a few that had houses that they would just come down to visit, like every few months. Like Bill Murphy, he would come down just every few months, and every time he'd come, he'd bring chocolate from the U.S. And oh my goodness, I just love Bill Murphy more than anything in the world, because he would bring me seized chocolate that I shared with my family, obviously. And he also would take photos of our family, which was amazing because we had no camera back then. And so all the photos we have from that time are from him. So he would take photos, and then the next time he'd come, it was all film, obviously. The next time he would come visit, he'd had developed the photos from his last trip, and he'd give them to us. And that was, I was so excited to see photos. I think that was my original falling in love with photography, was the anticipation of Bill Murphy bringing a stack of photos that he had snapped. And he just snapped so many photos back then, just documenting everything so abundantly in a way that I had never witnessed. That we didn't have a camera, but the way he took so many photos, and it felt so abundant and so loving that he wanted to capture all those moments. Like, it felt like it was important. Yeah. I felt like it was important. How beautiful. So the story I want to share is my mom and my stepdad, they were musicians. And I explained a little bit about that, I think, in the second episode about Lena. And so my mom and my stepdad, they would go to the city, which was Puerto Vallarta. You have to get there by boat. Remember, Yelapa is only reachable by boat. So on Fridays after school, we would rally quickly and get on the boat and go to Puerto Vallarta. Well, usually we would go to Boca de Tomatlan, which is just a little south of Puerto Vallarta. tie up the boat, get into our car that had to be jump started from a hill and drive into town. And they would have to rush out. They'd get ready in their nice clothes, and then they would run off to their job playing jazz at this jazz club called Francie's. And I would stay alone. And so I would be there Friday and Saturday, but Sunday I had to go back to Yelapa because I had school on Monday. And back then there were not regular water taxis, and there was actually no pangas, no water taxis on Sunday. So my mom would sneak me into the tourist boat, El Sarape, which was this big boat that tourists would go and drink and get drunk on, and it would go to Yelapa and land and anchor there for a few hours and then take all the drunk tourists back to Vallarta. And so I would just sneak on there like I was someone's kid, which gave me huge anxiety. I was so afraid they were going to find me out and like throw me overboard or kill me or something. But my mom would say, just act like you own the boat. I'm like, what do you mean? I'm like 9 or 8. But I did. I was a brave little thing. So I'd get on the boat, and that boat, oh my goodness, it was a slow boat to Yelapa, and it would rock, and I would get seasick about every single time. And it was just hell. I just would have to buckle down in hell until we got to Yelapa, and I'd jump out onto the dock, and like I said before, as soon as I would get to Yelapa, I'd kiss the ground. And I would go stop at a little fruit stand on the beach and buy myself some watermelon with salt, lemon, and chili, and that would usually help with the seasickness, and I'd start to feel better. And so there I was in Yelapa alone, like my mom and stepdad were still in Vallarta, right? So I needed a place to stay on Sunday nights. And back then, in the beginning, my mom was very dear friends with this expat named Ed. And he had moved down to Yelapa because he was supposedly dying. He was a smoker and had really bad emphysema, and I think he had lung cancer. But he was an elder. He must have been in his 70s back then, and he had one of the only refrigerators of anyone I knew. He had a gas refrigerator, and that was pretty incredible because that meant he had cold Coca-Colas in his fridge, and he had Snickers and Milky Way bars in his freezer. Frozen Milky Way and Snicker bars, which was unheard of because no one had a freezer. So Ed's house was also like a place of just like complete treats. And Ed helped my family. He really loved my mom, and my stepdad played poker with him. They had poker nights, and we had very little, and I think he made sure that we could cover our bills. My mom did a lot for him. She shopped for food for him in Vallarta and brought it on the boat back to him to Yelapa. She would check his mail. He had a P.O. box in Puerto Vallarta, and she'd bring his mail and his Time magazines and such, and so she really looked out for him. And so in the beginning, I would stay there. I would stay with Ed because he took such good care of me, right? Like I'd get there and he'd have my favorite food, which was egg salad on a bolillo bread, which is basically like a French bread. So he'd make this egg salad and have it in the fridge. So it was cold. P.S. Oh my God. Anything cold was just, it was just unheard of. And then a cold Coca-Cola, which, first of all, my family didn't buy Coke. And second of all, cold Coke in Yelapa is, I mean, it's the cream of the cream. Back then it was just, I don't know, how can I compare it? Like having ice cream in the Sahara Desert, I'd imagine. Like it just, a huge treat. So I want to emphasize that this place was a place of happiness, right? And he had Monopoly. He had the only board game that I knew of in Yelapa, and we'd play Monopoly a lot. And he really cared for me. He really did. And he also was a very bad man. And he'd do some pretty horrible things. I don't exactly remember how it happened, but I remember he started showing me, and I don't even know how he got these to Yelapa, but he had all these Playboy magazines, and he'd show me them, and he would touch himself and make me watch him, and of course tell me not to tell anybody. And Sunday night I'd go sleep in my own bed, but on Monday morning to be woken up for school. I had to go to school Monday morning, and he'd come wake me up, but I often would wake up to his fingers all over me in places I didn't even know existed back then. I was like, where are those fingers? And they were inside of me. And I was very confused because I didn't even understand my anatomy back then. And so I was very confused. I knew it felt horrible. I did not like it. But as soon as I'd kind of wake up, he'd like take his fingers out. Like he'd do it while I was sleeping and then wake me up. And I just knew it felt horrible. I didn't like it. I did not like it. And of course, he'd always tell me, don't tell anybody. You know, this is our secret. If you tell anybody, I'm going to tell your mom that you like looking at my Playboy magazines. That was the thing. Okay. But of course, little girl me, very sensitive little girl me, felt like everything was my fault anyway. And so I definitely thought that I'd brought it on. I'd also been told at that point by many adults that I was too touchy-feely, too flirtatious. I was 8. But I loved sitting on people's laps. I loved hugging and kissing. And I'd already understood by that age that there was something wrong with me. Instead of what I now know, children can be as they desire. And yes, we can help them with their boundaries maybe if what they're doing might be a little too sensuous or too sexual because they don't know. Then we get to help them with those boundaries. And most importantly, the adults hold those boundaries. They do not blame the child for being too sensuous, which is a very common thread throughout my entire childhood and teen years. Accused of being too sensuous. Like I asked for it, basically. So I definitely did not want to be told. First of all, I was confused because I didn't even like looking at those magazines. Those magazines made me feel very uncomfortable. Of course, I was kind of curious, like, whoa, what is this? But also like, yuck, I don't want to look at that. He made me look at them, right? But then, I'd get ready for school and I'd come down and have this really lovely breakfast ready for me. And so, yeah, I just would forget and brush off the weird fingers inside of my body where I didn't even know were. And I'd have the great breakfast he'd cook for me. And he had emphysema, so he'd be breathing really hard while he's like walking, doing his work around the kitchen to get my breakfast ready. He's in his 70s. And then he'd go lay down and he'd usually have his legs up so that his privates would pour out of his shorts and he would like dangle them while I'm having breakfast. So I could see his junk. And so the way that I made sense of all of this was, okay, I'm not quite sure. I know that I've been told I'm very sensuous, so I guess I brought this on. And I'd shake it off and I'd go to school and that was that. And, by Monday, my mom and stepdad were back in Yalapa, so I could go home. But this happened over and over and over because every Sunday I needed a place to stay. And Ed was the first place my mom felt safe for me to go stay. So this became a Sunday ritual. And it was confusing because, like I said, I really loved Cokes and the Milky Way, the frozen Milky Way bars. And I love that he spent time playing Monopoly with me. No other adult really played board games. Well, that's not true. We also played cribbage. A lot of adults played cribbage with me. I was pretty good at playing cribbage. That was a big game in amongst the expat gringos in Yalapa, at least in our little circle. And he treated me so kindly. And then this other stuff, which I didn't know exactly what it was. I thought for sure it was my fault. But mostly what I knew is I really hated the feeling of his fingers in my privates and up in places I didn't know where it even was. It felt almost like kind of like magic. Like, whoa, how does his fingers are like inside me. How is that possible? Because I didn't know. I had a cavity. I didn't know exactly how the vulva and vagina worked. And I just knew those fingers were somewhere inside. It felt horrible. I did not like it. And I would just stay silent. And luckily, he would, once I did fully wake up, he'd take them all out, say, I have breakfast for you, come down when you're ready, and onward we'd go. So I'm not sure how long this went on. Oh, quite a while. At least a year or so. And I finally was unable to just go with it anymore. And I didn't want to go. And so this is a point of big healing that I want to be very mindful when I share this, because I feel like, at least my experience, I cannot speak for anyone else's childhood sexual abuse experience, but at least for me, mine has been an opportunity of deep compassion and understanding for those around me who were unable to be there for me. It took a long time to get there, and I wish it were different, but I completely accept and understand the legacy and my ancestry around sexual trauma. And I've done the gorgeous work of remothering myself in this moment that I'm about to share. And this is where I feel like a lot of us have opportunity, or at least to be curious about. Maybe you don't want to, and that's fine. But for me, this was a very pivotal moment in the trajectory of my health, of my well-being, of my relationship as a child to mother. So in Yalapa, we had these beds that were hanging, and I love those beds. And my mom and Ron, my stepdad's, was downstairs, and they had mosquito nets. And on the side of the bed, my mom had this vanity that she had brought over. I don't know if she brought it from the States or from Puerto Vallarta, but it was this little vanity that she had where she'd keep her brush, and she really loved earrings. And she was at her vanity, like brushing her hair, and I came over and I said, Mom, or something to the effect. I don't know exactly what I said, but I do remember the feeling. I don't remember exact words, but I remember feeling brave enough to sit next to her and say, Mom, Ed does things to me that I don't like, and I don't want to stay there anymore. He touches me in ways I don't like, and I don't want to stay there anymore. And I don't exactly remember my mom's response, but my body remembers the feeling. And the feeling was, oh, don't be so dramatic. You're exaggerating. Ed's a wonderful guy. Please don't make stuff up. That's what my body understood. And so right then I just closed up, and I realized I was on my own. No one's going to protect me from this. I didn't share with my stepdad. I don't know why. But I think right then I just realized it was not shareable with other adults, and I was on my own. So I got to figure this out on my own. Now, I want to pause here. It could be really easy to be like, what's wrong with your mother? Nothing's wrong with my mama. Nothing. Although my mom has never told me, I have had many visions, and from things that she does, I think my mom was pretty severely sexually abused as well. I think my grandmother was too. It might be by my great-grandfather. I'm not sure. This is all speculation. These are just things that I've had visions of and thought of, and just thinking of my most recent ancestors. I met my great-grandfather, and everyone was scared of him, but I really liked him, and he was very kind to me. But I met him when he was in the late stages of Alzheimer's. He could barely talk. But everyone was very afraid of him. And as I got older, I was like, why was everyone so afraid of him? I thought he was so cute, but also, he couldn't speak to me or do anything. I mean, he was basically immobile. So I just got to know that version. But I then, looking at the people around me, I'm like, why was everything so afraid of him? And he was a brilliant man. He was a orchestra conductor and a beautiful man. Again, I'm completely projecting. I have no idea if this is true. But what I do know is that my mother suffered something. My grandmother probably even worse, is my speculation. And so there I am. Of course, in the moment, I don't know all these things. This is fast forward healing that I've done. But I think it's really important. I think for a long time, I know for a long time, the fracturing of my relationship with my mom started right then. because she was an amazing mama. She was an amazing mama. Oh, such beauty, so brave to move to Mexico. Gave me the best childhood of my dreams. I needed Yelapa. For my very sensitive nervous system. And she couldn't be there for me right then because she had no capacity. And in her body, it was probably like, oh, you think that's bad? You have no idea. That of course, she did not say that. This is all me doing my own work and getting visions of what has potentially happened to my mom and my grandmother. Because for decades, I was very angry at my mom and I was a victim. How could she not believe me? That was my story for decades. How could she not believe me? So that was a pivotal moment. And luckily, I became really close with Yenny, my bestie from 3rd grade, who walked me on that very first day to 3rd grade. And I started staying with her on Sunday nights. But that doesn't mean I'd go visit Ed because I had to take him things and he would still do weird things and masturbate and dangle his genitals in front of me. Very uncomfortable. But I minimized my time there. And if I was there, I was always like, I felt safest there with an adult, with another adult there. I did not like being there alone. So I was able to finally find safety and be in Yenny's home on Sunday nights, and that was fabulous. And I stuffed it all down. In high school, I moved back to Tucson because I wanted to go to college. And so I really wanted to go to American high school so I could get into college. I was very into school. And I don't remember how, but my dad, he was a counselor. He was a therapist. He helped people specifically with addiction. And somehow I shared with him what happened, and he did believe me, and he got me into therapy, which was the beginning of the healing. And therapy was lovely. I was a teenager, but, we did hypnosis, we did different things. Oh, I think the way he knew was, I forgot this very important part. Around the time I told my mom, or around the time the sexual abuse happened, which was around 9 years old, I started wetting the bed at night again. I hadn't wet the bed since I was a baby. And I started, out of nowhere, wetting the bed at night. And, I felt so, I still am working through the shame of that. Because I couldn't, when I would go spend the night at Yenny's house, I'd be so afraid. So I'd bring towels and I'd sleep on top of those towels in case I had an accident. And I try to not say it. And probably people noticed, but they were kind enough not to mention anything. And usually it happened in my own bed, but I think that was a body response of not feeling safe when I was asleep because those fingers would go up and when I was sleeping. So anyway, I think my dad recognized that as a very strange sign that a now teenager is still wetting the bed at night. And although I probably couldn't recognize it at the time, I bet he could recognize that I had a lot of shame around that. And so that was probably the beginning of opening up about what happened. And so therapy was the first step. And therapy was very helpful, but only to a point. And I feel like it was very much like, well, your mom did wrong and that guy is a predator and period. And you're a victim, which was correct. And that did not bring me healing. It wasn't until I moved to Taos, New Mexico in 1999. I graduated from high school, got a full scholarship to go to the U of A, NAU, and ASU. I declined them all and drove to Panama with my camera and a cooler full of film for 8 months. Came back and moved to Taos, New Mexico. And in Taos, New Mexico, I went to massage school instead, and that's how I began that journey. But in Taos, when I became a massage therapist and I was working at this chiropractor center called Taos Chiropractic, I became friends with this shaman woman, really incredible woman. And other people were seeing her and having these big transformations. And at the time, I stopped wetting the bed as soon as I turned 18, which is so weird. So weird. I just stopped. So strange. So by this time in Taos, I'm no longer having that issue, thank goodness. But I had these big boils on my neck. Like there were pimples, but like big on my neck, like the throat chakra area. And they were very painful. And I just knew something was not right in my body. Something was stuck in my body. And so I had no money at the time. No money. And I went and saw this shaman. And the first session was incredible, and there wasn't a lot of talk, and she just did this body work on me that was more energetic. The second time I came, I remember so vividly, because my concern were these boils on my neck and my chronic migraines, and just a lot of chronic issues of pain in my body. And somehow we got on the topic of the sexual abuse and therapy helped me mold this narrative. No one was there for me. No one believed me in the moment that it was happening. My mom wasn't there. She didn't believe me. That's why my life sucks. That was my story. And she opened up an alternate story. Hey, I think it's time to stop blaming. And let's do the healing. Because blaming your mom and blaming Ed for the challenge and all the pain in your body right now is not getting you anywhere. So how about we forgive them? So that was the first step. Forgiveness. Yes, let's forgive them. And it didn't happen immediately. Because I was very, very deep in my story of it's their fault that my life is so hard. It's their fault. And so to invite in for it to begin the practice of forgiveness. Oh, and P.S., by this time Ed was dead. Ed died when I was in high school. So to begin the practice of forgiveness for one person who was already dead and for another person who was my mother. And that was the beginning. That was the beginning of the true healing. Lo and behold, those weird ass things on my neck did subside, and my chronic pain did subside. I was also really lucky to be very into Dr. Sarno's work, The Cure for Chronic, who is the mentor of my current favorite teacher, Nicole Sachs, whose podcast is The Cure for Chronic Pain. So at that time, though, I was reading Dr. Sarno's book. It was Healing Back Pain, I think was his first book. And so I was understanding like back pain and a lot of physical pain was mind-body connection, was repressed emotions, was somaticized pain in the body from emotions. Somaticized emotions is what I'm trying to say. So I was putting all of that together little by slowly, as Nicole Sachs says. But I still had more work to do. I still hadn't gone back to that moment and held baby girl Jade and told her, I believe you and I'm going to protect you and no one's ever going to put their fingers inside of you ever again unless you give them permission. And so that didn't come until so that was early 20s. That didn't come for another 17 years. So I got really into forgiveness and that worked. But I also felt very triggered around my mom still at that time. Every time I would hang out with her, I felt very triggered if she talked about Ed, what she did, because she loved him. Oh my God, I just would flare my whole body. But I wouldn't want to say anything because I didn't want to bring it up to my mom because I know that she didn't have the capacity for that. But I feel very triggered and I still had a lot of resentment, I realized. I'd forgiven, but I still had a lot of resentment. I don't like that resentment. So it was when my son was probably around 6 or 7 years old. And I'd already started diving deep into shadow work and re-parenting and holding the inner child and all this kind of healing inner child work, basically. that was the beginning of inner child work and the remothering. And for me, the remothering was tricky because I felt like at the beginning, the concept of remothering was hard because I feel like that meant that I had to dismiss all the beauty that my mom did offer, because she did. She was an incredible mother. She was. I needed remothering healing, not because my mom was a horrible mother, but because she was not able to be there for me in all the ways I needed. She was there for me in so many amazing ways. There were some ways she couldn't for her own journey. And while I wish it were different, I so honor that. I so honor that she just couldn't be there for that. And so those are the things I desire to remother. But I think it's, at least for me, it's important. I want to acknowledge the beauty alongside the pain. And it's taken me about 40 years to understand what I truly need. And I'm still learning, to be honest. I'm still learning what I need. So how can I expect my mother to know everything I need? And for whatever reason, she couldn't be there in a moment that I really needed her. But that's because no one has been there for her. And so I also see it as my opportunity for generational healing right then. So my remothering process took place in Colorado. I had done a few ayahuasca ceremonies before this, and that was really helpful to start unlocking the shame that was deep inside of me. But my husband had given me a little joint. And I don't smoke marijuana because I just get so anxious and I feel like I'm dying, basically, especially with this weed today. I used to smoke in high school, back in that really seedy, stemmy Mexican ganja that we used to get in high school. That was so mellow. It was so mellow. I can't do it now. Oh my gosh, this ganja today, what the heck is this stuff? It is so hybrid, I can't even. I stopped smoking marijuana when I was like 19 because it just became too strong for me. But anyways, he gave me this and he said it was really mellow. I was like, okay, well, maybe I'll do a little ceremony when I'm in Colorado. When my son's doing something, I'll go into the woods and I'll have a little healing ceremony. And so I did. I had like one hit because that's a plenty for this very sensitive body. And I had a few hours to myself. And at first it was like, oh gosh, overwhelming. And then I started doing breath work because that's what that's my practice of regulation when I feel overwhelmed. And so I just had to commit to doing breath work because if I stopped, I would start to feel really overwhelmed while I was high. And so as I'm doing this breath work, this incredible thing opens up. And I go back to that very moment, sitting on the hanging bed in front of that vanity mirror, but my mom's not there. Instead, 40-year-old Jade is there, sitting on the bed with a 9-year-old precious little girl. And I look at her and I see her blonde hair and the sweat in her forehead and the nervousness wringing her hands and the worry in her eyes and the smell of her body. I can smell her scent and the warmth of her little body, little 9-year-old girl. And I put my arms around her and I say, tell me everything. And I tell adult me everything. Oh, I'm so sorry. I tell her, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry he did that to you. I'm so sorry I wasn't there to protect you. I'm so sorry, honey. That should have never happened. And I promise you, and then like a little bit of fierceness, I promise you, no one will ever do that to you again. I will protect you. And we're going to go tell him that he cannot do that. And I'm going to show you with my adult self that I am going to tell the other adult that they have done wrong and shame on them. And they aren't going to be a close part of our family anymore. Shame on them. No. It's not okay. What he did was not okay. And he is no longer a close friend of this family. And little girl me just softens and knows that she's safe, knows she's believed, knows she doesn't have to come up with a 9-year-old version of how to protect herself, but instead the adult will protect her for now. And so then I come back out of that and I'm doing my breath work, and just like that first time with the shaman, I started feeling shifts in my body. I was like, whoa, I just changed the story. I have been believed. I am protected. I have so much compassion that for whatever reason, my mama couldn't be there, and that's okay. I have so much compassion for who protected my mom as a baby girl and my grandmother as a baby girl, because no one was there protecting them. I know that. I mean, no one's told me that, but I can feel it in my own body, in my own inherited memory, body memory. So this was a very powerful moment, because as I started to remother these moments, and then I would go back and remother other moments, I just, hand to heart, feet to earth. I got this. I got me. I got me. And the next time I went to go visit my mom, it was transformational. I'm no longer triggered by her. I see her for the precious person that she is. I'm so happy she's still alive. I wish she would share with me what happened to her, but I know that she can't even speak to that. It would probably kill her, to be honest. And I also know that I can't share this story with her because I think it also would kill her, because she was doing her best. She was barely surviving, trying to raise me. Barely surviving. But also living a beautiful life. She gave me a beautiful life. She's forgiven, and I hold her like the mother she deserved when maybe she wasn't protected. I want to hold her in those moments. And I want to hold my grandmother too. I want to hold all of the women who weren't protected. And I can do that. That's, in my opinion, generational healing. And it's not because I'm better or no, this stuff has been so hard. It's been decades and decades in the making. But, I go back. I hold my mom, even though I don't know what happened to her exactly, but I know something did. And my grandmother, I got you. I got you. You're protected. I believe you. It's not okay to be touched in a way that doesn't feel good as a child. You're allowed to say what feels good and doesn't. And I'm going to protect you, and I'm going to believe you. You can be as sensuous as you want. I might have to, help you with some boundaries around that. But it's the adult's responsibility not to act on that. So now when I'm with my mom, it's so beautiful. And I wish I could see her more often. She's in Mexico, and my life is here in Tucson, co-parenting my son. But I wish she would move here. So she could be with me in Sequoia. And my husband also loves my mom. And she's such a brave, beautiful human. And it feels so good to not have to blame her for the hard, because my life is still hard. I still deal with a lot of chronic pain, and that's my journey. That's my opportunity for healing. That's my invitation to deeper healing. I believe most of my healing is in my power to heal. I believe most of my anxiety, my body pain, depression, even when I get an illness, is because there's a lot of somaticized emotion that needs to be tended to. And so the freedom, I'm not blaming my mama. And also, even recently I've had some compassionate thoughts about Ed. He probably had some horrible stuff happen to him too. Because usually people do that, have a history of that happening to them as well. Again, not because I'm giving anyone a pass. It's not I'm saying what he did. I think this is such a nuanced space, and you don't have to agree with me on any of this, P.S. This is my journey. And as adult Jade, who feels like a very grounded mother who always has healing to do, P.S. I always have more to heal. I know that there's things I'm going to get to apologize to my son one day, because you don't know what you don't know. And once I do know, I'm going to apologize for it. I don't know the stupid ass shit I'm saying and doing today, but once I am aware of it, I desire to take accountability for it. So I have had thoughts of, oh, poor Ed. I bet he too was not protected as a baby boy. And I know this is the right feeling, because it makes me so, these tears I'm crying is not sad. It's like, wait. It's like all these children who wanted also to be protected. And this day and age, I like being a mothering figure to my mom. I love praising her and just loving her in the best way that I possibly can. And she's such a beauty. She's such an incredible woman. She's 75 and lives by herself on this hill in Mexico, and it's very intense barrio that's very hard on my nervous system, but she loves it. And it's very loud. Lots of cars, lots of cohetes, big firecrackers all the time. Like boom, boom. It's so rough on my nervous system there. She loves it. She has a little family that lives in a little house right in her property, which feels nice because if anything happened, they're right there. She's formed a community. She's learned Spanish fluently now. Like, she's made a life. And I love seeing her through the eyes of a mother rather than through the eyes of a victim, if that makes sense. And in my life, I often have to pause and take a breath and say to myself, am I acting like a victim here, or am I acting like an empowered mother who's got this? Not because that shitty thing should be just excused or forgotten about. I mean, I think that's a personal journey for everyone. But because I desire to operate from a place of, I'm safe, I got me, I'm nobody's victim. I got me. I'm really smart, I can figure things out. I love the superpower of forgiveness. I love the superpower of remothering. And there's stuff too that I've had to go back and refather as well. A lot of stuff. I learned my first eating disorder from my dad. That's a story for another time. So, lots of things to heal. But I feel like, at least my experience, and you can disagree, therapy is tricky for me because I feel like it really emphasizes and really encourages me to be a victim. But there's also a lot of good to it. There's also a lot of good. But I'm more curious on how can we heal? How can we forgive? Even the hardest of hard. Maybe it's not possible. I don't know. Because what done to me, if we were to compare sexual abuse on a scale, I mean, I think mine is pretty minor compared to a lot of other people. A lot. So I'm not telling you what you should do. Please hear me clearly. But I am saying, there's so much beauty. And from this beauty, of having experienced that, having forgiven, having remothered, the way that I can hold space for my clients, the safety that I can hold, the self-compassion I have for myself, and especially because I'm a bigger woman and now I'm older and I'm at peace with all these things that society tells me are undesirable. A fat older woman, who wants that? I do. I want her. And all of these things that I've been able to heal on myself have come through in my photography, definitely come through in the safety and when I massage my clients, I feel like I am the mother. Not Jade is the mother, but I feel like I'm able to embody Mother Nature's motherness, the ultimate mother. And for me, when I need help with remothering, the hot springs is where I go, which is what I said before. When I feel really dysregulated, I go and get my body into these hot springs because that feels like the remother. That feels like the mother holding me. I'm safe. So when I massage my clients, no matter what gender they are, I love bringing that mother. And as I'm older, it's even better because even like specifically with male clients, there doesn't have to be any, because it can be so tricky, you know. Massage is such a vulnerable, intimate thing. And I want men to feel like I am their mother, not their potential, you know, like, no. And so now that I'm older and fat, that like dispels that energy. And instead, I feel like they really are allow themselves to surrender to the all mother energy. Not because their mamas were bad. Again, like this is not about why didn't our mothers do X, Y, and Z? It's more like our mamas did the best. Let's fill in the gaps with the rest. Let's fill in the gaps with the rest. Our mamas did their best. Let's bring Mother Nature and fill in all the gaps that need to be held. I got you. I am the ultimate mother. You're safe here. Nothing is expected from you. You're protected. You're seen as a treasure to be protected. So that is this journey, and I'm continuing to alchemize it, but I feel pretty complete on it. And my gauge is how I can be around my mama. It's a beautiful thing. I'm not resentful. I feel like I get to be her parent a little bit. She might not agree with that. She might not even realize that that's even happening, but that's how I see it. I feel like I get to parent her a little bit, and if I lived closer to her, I would do it even more. I just want her to feel protected and held and cared for. But to do that, you know, you also have to grieve that, you know, all of us want a mama as our parents get older and as they need more of our help. But here's the thing, my loves. Mother Nature is our mama. Go lay on the earth. Go in the forest. Go get some hot springs. Be held by the ultimate mother who has the same makeup as our bodies have. Water, stardust, and magic. Go be with the ultimate mother if you need some remothering. And, yeah, I wish you a freeing experience if you've had something similar or something even worse. I see you, I believe you. I'm here with you. Let's walk together. Let's take a few breaths together. Put your feet on the earth if you're able. Shake out your hands. Shake your shoulders. Maybe do a little circle of your head. Let's inhale through our nose with our mouth closed. Open your mouth. Shake your hands. Inhale through your nose. Open your mouth. Shake your hands, shake your feet. Place your hands to your heart. This body is safe. This body is safe. Inhale. This body is loved. This body is lovable. I have all the power. I have the power to heal myself. I have the power to believe myself. I have the power to see the beauty in all of the pain. Thank you, thank you, thank you, precious body. And I remind you, your body is a precious treasure to be protected. Your body is worthy of your kindness. Your body is a home to ancient intelligence and also the home to all of your memories. It is the point of conscious evolution and the point of beauty manifesting. Thank you for being in that body. Thank you for being in practice. If you're not already fully there, thank you for being in practice of being kind to yourself. It is the way to the juiciest, healthiest life. I promise you this. Thank you, thank you, thank you. And I'll see you next week. Bye.
Dime a dónde vas y en qué pensás. Tu alma está perdida, ya dejaste de soñar, cansada de andar, de no poder parar. Tus ojos se ven tristes.
Hey, are you still here? Would you do me an amazing favor and like this podcast and subscribe? Is that something you do? I don't know. Can you like it? Can you review it? It would mean so much to me. I read every single one. There's only a few, so I would love if you'd leave me one. It would truly mean the world to me. Thank you.